Hello and welcome to another episode of Practice Forward. I'm Owen Bush, your host, and today we are joined with Kayla Cooper from Kayla Cooper Design. Hi, Kayla.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. It's great to have you here today. So Kayla is a very interesting guest. She is an architect, an engineer, and a designer. And Kayla focuses on defensive architecture and security environments. So Kayla designs for the threats most architects never have to imagine: ballistics, biohazards, and the edge cases of failure. Her portfolio spans secure government facilities, high threat containment systems, and architectural strategies for threat scenarios where visibility is risk and discretion is protocol. So great to have you today. I'll just say Practice Forward podcast is sponsored by Scan to Plan. Scan to Plan is the measure of excellence for architects and engineers. We're the LiDAR to BIM company that can measure and model any building in weeks. So check us out at scantoplan.io. So Kayla, welcome. It's so great to talk about this, and it's it's something we could talk about, but we can't really look at because it's one of these things where folks. I mean, I've done a lot of projects that have a lot of high discretion, require NDAs and high security, but I don't think anything compared to the types of projects you work on.
Yeah.
So anyway, your path to coming around to this is really quite interesting. You're trained as it sounded like you have degrees as both an engineer and an architect. And then it sounded as you kind of started in interior design, and then you wound up leading to defense architecture. So what drew you there? Tell me a little bit about that.
So initially I began, in interior design and interior architecture, and had a lot of clients in the luxury sector that required specific secure systems to, contain their stuff, be it, jewelry or cash or just, things that needed to be safe. From there, it kind of became known that I was really good at, number one, securing things, but above all, hiding things and making sure that, people couldn't get into them. And from there, it was kind of like a word of mouth thing. Okay, you need this done, give Kayla a call. And then from there, it became securities. And, from there, it grew into defense. So in going through my own schooling, I went to art school for undergrad and was involved in industrial design and engineering, and then, got master's degrees in real estate development and architecture, and worked my way through the process to where I am now.
Wow. And then you told me you come from a military family, so they must be proud of you for sort of coming back into the fold in some regard.
They are. So yes, I grew up in DC. I had a huge family that were, all involved in either government work or in the military to some degree. And I had always said, I'm going to go to art school, I'm going to run away, and I'm going to be an artist and do, something fun. And it's definitely a full circle moment to come back around and apply those skills to, work alongside my relatives. So,
So, I mean, it's interesting because you basically design spaces that are meant to never be seen.
Right.
I think that's really an interesting challenge for a designer. So, I mean, how do you define your design mission when, these spaces are never meant to be seen, or, like, knock on wood, that they'll never even be, used?
I always say, because, that's a question I get asked. I don't define it. The definition's there. The mission is always the same. It's what are we containing and what are we protecting? And at the end of the day, the safety of that is what defines the mission. I'm just the response,
Right. Well, I imagine there is, like, a lot of interest. I mean, I haven't necessarily seen any of these spaces, but I imagine that there are some design considerations. I would
Absolutely.
imagine similar to designing contemplative spaces or kind of
Mhm.
worship spaces where, you want to put people's mind at ease in these environments.
Right.
Right? Probably the most high stress moments of their life if they're going to be
Mhm.
trapped in some of these rooms or.
I When you put it that way, no, I think with any project, whether it's interior or architecture or you're engineering anything, the considerations are, what's going on there. A lot of times it's a lot of research. What's the biggest stress factor? What's our biggest threat? And we analyze from every angle at that point. Are we doing it for safety? Are we doing it for show? Are we doing it to be seen, not seen? What's going to happen there? And from there we really kind of snuff out where we're going and what the end goal is, and then meet in the middle of and find out how to get there to execute.
Right. So how do you frame success when discretion is really the part of the design brief?
I'm a big believer that some things in life have to just be for you and nobody else.
Mhm.
That in mind, I would say I frame success by the safety at the end of the day. Is everyone safe, and does it continue to be safe? I don't want to say like loss of life, a factor, but if it is, have we lost anybody, and, has everyone come home? So I think that's my biggest frame of reference is, has it been successful by, continuing to maintain its integrity and its safety for those utilizing it?
Right. Right. So, in a lot of these design
Mhm.
scenarios, it seems as if you're really pushing the envelope of
Yeah.
a lot of new materials, a lot of new
Mhm.
research, and you've also worked in a lot of different climates and regions. So, how do you evaluate the materials you're using for extreme stress, containment, or impact resistance?
We do a lot of testing. So a lot of times there's new materials that come on the market. We may do research studies. We may do, we take a lot of trips to take materials places in the middle
Mhm.
of nowhere to test them out to see exactly how far they can go and in what climates. And we have, maintaining running lists of what's been successful, what can't operate in certain conditions and where, and find those breaking points so that when push comes to shove or it's time to build, we know exactly what we're doing and how it will perform and operate under said circumstances. So testing, 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 and a lot of research, studies, and blowing things up from time to time.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, give me an example of some of
Mhm.
the results you're looking for in materials. What kind of conditions they need to stand up to, and then how would you actually test it?
So a lot of times, just for instance, let's say, it was ballistics. We need something that, can it be penetrated? Can it not? Or how does it, if it is penetrated, what happens and what depth, and, how much can we stack on top of itself to maintain integrity? Or,
Mhm.
in a certain environment, is it extremely cold? Is it extremely hot where we're going to put this? How does this work? Or how does it fail in that environment? So a lot of times, like I said, we will take a lot of trips to certain places where, this might be utilized, and set up shop there and say, okay, we're going to take blank material out, carbon fiber, or some type of wood, or whatever, a metal, get a ton of it, see what happens when it's in the sun. And, if something were to be shot at, does it penetrate? And then
Right,
where does that bullet go? What does it do? And then kind of take notes from there, and then repeat the process, until we are either successful or say, okay, this can't work, and, need to move on to a new material.
right. So, and it sounds as if you have, feel free to, be as
Yeah.
discreet as you want about this, but it sounds like you have government clients, and then you also have private sector clients. And so
Mhm.
how, give me some examples of the type of spaces you're designing, just more specifically.
So it could range. It could be something as a residential project where someone says, listen, I'm a dignitary. I'm someone that, may hold a specific title and need to ensure that my safety and my family's safety is met. That we've had threats, or, I am uneasy about my location. A lot of times we might build for people that, have those sorts of high threat or risk averse people that, need a property developed. So, okay, I want to be here, so we're going to put them up that maybe they have a vantage point so their security can, be more solid as opposed to being within a residential neighborhood. So we might build something like that or design something like that. Or someone who has a commercial space who says, I deal with a lot of break-ins. Hold certain materials. Maybe it's jewelry, maybe it's something, I don't even know, servers. A lot of times we don't know what we're, trying to protect, but this is what happens here. So can you ensure the safety here? So it could be, maybe a shop that you walk past on the street, or, maybe a warehouse, something like that. And then you can get into government projects, which, could be a slew of things, whether it's a military facility or somewhere where they maintain, anything military or, government related documents, chemicals, a lot of times we don't even know. So they just kind of give us a slight overview and we say, okay, we'll help you out.
Amazing. To
Yeah.
go from luxury environments to protecting uranium is amazing. So, I mean, you always, essentially, I'm sure your thinking process is always about thinking about the worst case scenario, obviously. So,
Absolutely.
um, so I would imagine there's all kinds of layers of technology, but then there's
Mhm.
also a lot of layers of different manual overrides and fail safes where,
Mhm.
so how do you design something where the smart tools must never fail?
Keeping in mind that smart tools can always fail is,
Yeah.
is how you do it. I think anytime you're designing, as wonderful as technology is and as necessary as it is, you have to always plan for the event that it's just not available, that it can fail, and ensuring that there are manual overrides to, counteract whatever that function may be. A lot of times those two systems have to coincide and work together, with
Mhm.
ultimately understanding that there has to be some sort of shut off, or stopping point, and that some sort of, uh, you know, manual human being can go in and pick up where it left off.
Right. Do you have a good example of that? Something where there's like multiple layers of fail safes?
Definitely. I mean, I think even, and I'll just speak vaguely, but I mean, even you could say like in prison systems, a lot of times there are a lot of electronics that, provide locking mechanisms, that provide the safety, kind of we would be discussing, but you can't, lock a human being into a room without a way to get them out. And so there have
Right.
to be keys, there have to be codes that maybe override the system, or ways to, be able to enter a room in case the power goes out, or the software fails. So, obviously you can have those systems where, yeah, you can have a code that could unlock, a door, but you also need to be able to have a manual key because, you have to keep people safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I imagine there's a lot of different types of regulatory friction when you're talking about uranium storage or ballistic resistance.
Mhm.
Um, how does that kind of reshape your own sequencing for design and architecture?
I think it when it comes up, obviously you have to address it. A lot of the times the frequency sequencing you're not uninterrupting it because you're still following the same protocols. Safety is still the number one priority in the mission overall. We're still
Mhm.
following and analyzing and researching and performing all sorts of testing prior to even executing on a project. So you address them as they pop up, but in certain instances, you'll get the override for or to continue with something because there are just some projects where it may apply, to some people, but it may not apply to us.
What's an example of like a trade-off that you have to make when you're thinking about designing for usability versus designing for safety?
Definitely efficiency, I would say. A lot of times, especially with technology blossoming the way that it is, we're so used to fast-paced things happening instantly. A lot of times when you've got to make sure that there's manual overrides, you're just not getting the efficiency because human error, number one, we're not training, for the Olympics in an emergency situation. We're training to be fast and we're training to make sure that, things go smoothly. But in those sort of circumstances, a lot of times people are nervous or things happen. And so, you lose efficiency. And unfortunately, that's just tied into convenience. And
Yeah,
so a lot of times you're losing efficiency and convenience.
right. And then I would imagine, you're working with teams and you're probably working
Mhm.
with a whole number of different consultants and
Mhm.
advisors but I would also imagine that there's a lot of discretion and security. So I think
Yeah,
you had mentioned to me that you sort of compartmentalize your projects so that nobody really knows
100%.
the full picture, so that in some ways it's to protect them as well.
Yeah,
So how do you build trust in your teams when information is so compartmentalized?
I don't. I don't. I think when you're dealing with high stakes scenarios, you have to work with people that are responsible and overly accountable and know
Yeah,
what's at risk and take that very seriously. Um, yeah, I can watch your pattern and see that, yes, you've demonstrated that you are a trustworthy individual and that your work speaks for itself. But um, I think it's kind of like, training or being in the military. You can, you've got your brothers, right next to you going into battle, but it is at a certain point every man for himself. Not everyone's going to be able to watch your back and help you out at certain times. And the trust and the self accountability has to be there. Uh, because I mean, sometimes people forget, you can't disclose certain things.
yeah,
Sometimes there's mistakes, and as much as you want to trust or rely on people, I'm a big proponent for, trust but verify. At the end of the day, when you're talking about people's lives, there really can't be trust because we've got to check behind each other and make sure that this got done or this happened this way or this operates to the level at which we wish to see it operate.
right.
So it's one thing you have to learn to just not be offended by. I'm not micromanaging. We're all making sure. And, someone comes behind me to check and someone comes behind that person to check, and it goes, backwards and forwards. That way it's at the end of the day doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people have asked you to build all kinds of pretty surprising things.
Mhm.
Is there anything you can share? Like, what's the weirdest thing anybody ever asked you to make?
But probably, I mean, most of all, it's I the craziest, I don't know if there's so much the craziest. A lot of times people want stuff to like be able to hide things that like, there's people that are like, could you build me somewhere where like I could hide drugs or I could like evade law enforcement, things like that.
Yeah,
So you get that a lot. I'm Listen, I sign NDAs. We sign, there's clearances for a lot of everything. So as long as I always tell people, as long as there's not people going into these rooms for the wrong reasons, and there's not, I don't care what you're putting in there. I don't want to know. It's none of my business, as long as it's nothing that, would hurt somebody else. But
right.
definitely, a lot of people want stuff that like is hidden, I guess, out of, I would say, public eye, like visitors to their home. I get a lot of offers or people asking me like, could you build me like a sex dungeon that's like,
Oh,
at the back of my house somewhere? And I'm like, this is not a security matter. This is just you don't want your mom to find out kind of thing. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but probably, more stuff for guns. The crazy outlandish stuff is usually government stuff.
right. Yeah.
That you're like, oh, okay, I don't even want to know, so
Sure. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I would imagine, you come across a number of pretty colorful
Mhm.
characters and probably
Yeah.
some shady characters occasionally, and
Mhm.
um, I'm sure you've got clear ethical boundaries in the type of clients you
Mhm.
work with. What kind of vetting process do you have before committing to a client?
So for obviously, we would get the scope of work, figure out exactly what they're trying to do. We do a site visit and an analysis. And if at any point we go somewhere and we're like, this is, I don't know, this feels kind of off. I'm a big believer in obviously trusting your gut. A
Yeah.
lot of times there's referrals that happen. People are being sent to us by someone reputable or someone that I know personally or have done projects with.
Mhm.
So it's not so much of a concern versus you know, uh, if we go somewhere and someone's just outright telling you, hey, like I smuggle fentanyl or cocaine and, I need somewhere to put this. Can you help me? It's kind of done from there.
Well, I would imagine they come out and say that right away.
All the time, all the
Oh
time.
yeah, really?
I've absolutely all the time.
Huh.
Like I said, I'm not above anything. It's none of my business what you do with whatever. But yeah, if it's someone who's like, hey, yeah, we're gonna use this for, I don't know, God forbid, like human trafficking or something. Like, are you kidding? No, we're not doing that,
Yeah.
um, absolutely not. So just kind of finding out people's intent and how they plan to use it. People obviously will tell on themselves because I don't think people realize the information they reveal, as they're talking at times, so what are you going to put in here? Oh, I don't know. We just needed this. And you're kind of like probing a little more and eventually you get to the answer and they'll say, oh, we're, we're smuggling X, Y, and Z. And you're like, all right, yeah, no, we can't do that. So
So
interviewing.
you're in this very highly specific world, right? And I'm sure it
Mhm.
has its own trends and its own innovations that are happening all the time. What are you seeing there that might actually translate over into the broader world of AEC and regular architects and engineers that a lot of times great innovations come out of the military, they come out
Mhm.
of a lot of tech innovations are being developed for defense. And so, do you see anything spilling out of all this research that's happening that might trickle out into just regular architecture?
I'm hoping that a lot of these security practices will be streamlined into spaces that are neglected. With AI on the forefront, with like 3D printing, I'm hoping to see the efficiency of some of these things, streamline the process as well. So, in the use of materials, number one, making those more accessible to the public to create safety in spaces like of worship. Number one, where we're seeing like a rise in violence, toward the participants, as well as schools. I think parents are deeply concerned, in today's climate about the safety. Um, I think using AI or using, kind of robot processors and 3D printing with different materials, making those more accessible will hopefully speed up the process and make it more economically accessible so
Mhm.
that some of these protocols can be implemented in those spaces. So
What
I Mhm.
what kind of applications do you think AI could have in terms of keeping people safe?
I think in engaging and determining threats, number one, just kind of our surveillance systems. as we
Mhm.
use that face recognition, weapons recognition, even. A lot of times you see instances where people are approaching schools with weapons, things of that nature, or just identifying threats prior
Mhm.
to them getting to, I would say that would be our front line of defense, but our front door, and engaging them far out versus right where, the front door of an elementary school is or a church is.
Right. So, I mean, as you're like literally stress testing these materials all the time,
Mhm.
you're applying materials in a way that actually, pushes them to the limits in the way that most architects and engineers wouldn't.
Mhm.
So, I think that actually gives you some insights about, what new materials are needed. What kind of blind spots do you feel are out there in material science?
There's a lot of blind spots, material science wise, just in, I mean, I will always preach safety and things that in today's day and age and our very modern, technology forward world, um, materials that respond to ballistics, that respond to chemicals, or respond to just threats of force, be it tensile strength, or just being able to stop something bigger than ourselves, whether that's like a meteor or hail or a bullet, something that is strong enough to withstand without being penetrated on any level.
So what kind of fancy materials are you using that have properties? Are you able to disclose any of that? And
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's anything specific, but definitely a lot of metals we're testing at this point.
Mhm.
Trying to there's a lot of material science research being done on fungi and their ability to, once stacked on top of each other or woven together, be effective in terms of maintaining strength and flexibility.
Mm.
So a lot of times it's not one specific, it's several together. This can do this and this can do that, and then kind of putting those all together to create a system. But a lot of times it takes a long time because we're implementing those strategies using singular things put together. So they all have to be tested separately, or vetted separately. And on top of that, also trying to create new materials as those processes happen. So you kind of
Mhm.
need several teams, someone to test, someone to see where the failure happened, and where we need to continue uh, you know building upon, and then someone to create new things or to find new things, because there's a lot of materials coming out every day that we either find in the jungle and various places around the world, in the ocean even, or that we create with our ability to create different polymers, fibers, or have varying chemical reactions. So
Yeah.
it's an ongoing process.
Well, I mean,
So
I would imagine for any materials researcher, having a relationship with someone like you would be incredibly valuable because you're actually out in the
yeah.
field testing things all the time. Do you have like a direct relationship with any like research facilities, or are there like scientists that you collaborate with frequently?
I wouldn't say frequently. I think there are times where, yes, the opportunity presents themselves. I will never credit myself to be as intelligent as some of those people. So
Uh-huh.
it's, very much an honor to be included in some of those conversations. Those are a lot of very brilliant people that dedicate a lot of their time and energy to this sort of research, and I respect and appreciate them tremendously. I just like to see things go boom, so for me, it's really just the testing that's exciting. I offer
Sure.
no assistance in
Yeah.
anything of large that requires large intelligence. So those are all them. But yeah, there are some working relationships. I don't have anyone that I go to specifically because each project is different. And a lot of times we'll repeat materials that we know work until we find something newer or that is different, because there's also a track record that needs to be established in these sorts of instances where, okay, this has worked several times and this and this and this happened and not this and this and this. So it can take it could take 5 years even to implement a new material sometimes,
Sure.
for something infantile. So
Yeah.
and when you think about it in that context, it's, we might speak today and then not speak again for 3 years until this material is proven or approved by for use by a certain, body or board. So
Yep.
yeah.
So, I mean, considering that, basically your work is meant to essentially be invisible, or not, or at least not be seen by,
Mhm.
I mean, in some cases only be seen in the most worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just really curious about, as a designer, because you are also an artist and designer. I'm just
Mhm.
curious about what kind of thought process you put into what are these environments like for people.
Definitely. So I hate to say I always think about myself, but I always think about how I would want to spend my time in it. But
Yeah.
also getting to know those people and hearing, their stories, figuring out what's going to happen there. What do they need? And how can we fit those things in? I think a lot of times they're high stress situations or scenarios or in places that are far from home or uncomfortable. So really just how can I bring some sort of peace or comfort so that you're able to do your best job? How can I support you in those moments? How do you what temperature do you like your AC at? Or, what comforts, help you psychologically so that you're not under stress when a high stress situation arises. So really
Yeah.
just kind of getting to know people and thinking, of thinking of myself.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So
Um, so, let's just say if you were able to
mhm,
design a, future future facing secure facility,
mhm,
and you had absolutely no restraints on regulatory, budget, or client limits,
mhm.
what would you build right now in 2025?
What are we containing and protecting?
Oh, I don't know. Let's just say we're containing people.
Containing people, I would want to design probably something that can take, if they're around and they're real, I would want to design like an alien facility, something to contain and you know, get to know them. Um, I want to, what's that?
No extraterrestrials?
Something extraterrestrial, something interesting, something crazy, something that hasn't been done, I would say.
Oh, good.
But
Well,
ultimately,
I take it you haven't built one yet then.
no, yeah, they haven't approached me for that just yet. No, I'd be really interested in designing something for space, something that obviously, that's a huge life and death scenario that would
Sure.
require different security systems and different safety protocols. I think I would have to spend a lot of time educating myself on, especially since it's not something like we can just, jump on a plane and go and experience ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a really unspoken environment that not a lot of us know anything about, so I
Sure.
would love to do something like that where obviously nothing can get in and nothing can get out, because I
Yeah.
think that would really test the limits of materials of design and security and defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I'm
yes.
sure if you're living on another planet, let's say Mars,
Hmm.
the design and architecture is even more important because you're basically
Yeah.
stuck in these buildings all the time. You can't really go outside
100%.
very much, and you're basically going to have to live in whatever facilities are provided for you. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
architecture engineering becomes in some ways even more like massively important there.
Hmm.
We're talking about, like environments that people are going to spend their entire lives in, and it creates a
Yeah.
profile, psychological
Yep.
domain for them. So with younger architects who are thinking about moving into this field you're in, what would you tell them? I mean, it seems like, for most architecture students, and even for you, right? You started out thinking really more about designing for delight, designing for pleasure, designing for aesthetics, and now you're thinking about designing for safety and danger. So, what would you tell people? I would imagine there's not a lot of places where there's training for this. It seems like the kind of thing people stumble into. What would you tell the younger architects who are thinking about this area?
I would say, number one, make sure you can validate yourself, because, a lot of times I think we define our success by accolades and by accomplishments that people can see. Obviously, that's not par for the course here, and something you have to learn how to do is to pat your own self on the back. So I would say that, number one. Number two being, don't be afraid to push the envelope. Don't be afraid to do the crazy thing, say the crazy thing, create the crazy thing. I was often told throughout my time in undergrad and in my master's programs that my ideas were too big and scary and that nobody would ever want to build them. I take great pride in subcontracting those individuals now to work on my project because they weren't too big and scary. It's that, you have a vision and you need to follow that and not let anybody tell you what you're capable of. Only you know what you're capable of. So do the big and scary thing. Nothing's too big and scary, nothing. So be able to validate yourself, and to, when you find something that's big and scary, an idea or a vision, go further.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Thank you.
So, for most architects, I would imagine that they think of their legacy based around, buildings that they could see. They say, oh, look at that building. That's my legacy. It's going to be here 200 years from now. But for the work that you do, no one ever really sees it. So, how do you define your legacy as an architect?
That's a good one. I would have to say, and everyone else's safety. If you never hear about it, that's how I would define my legacy. If you never see it, if you never, if there's nothing written about how my project failed. No, but genuinely in other safety, and making sure that the things that were meant to be contained and protected are, and that they were never either penetrated, found, or were the reason that someone is no longer with us. So I would say just in everybody else coming home at night. So.
But is that satisfying for you? Do you ever feel like you wish that people could see more of your work?
It is, actually. It is. I think one thing about my personality, most people would say, I for some reason have this air of mystery to me. Everybody is always like, you're so aloof, you're so vague. I think it's honestly just a little bit of my personality. I'm very okay with keeping it all here, keeping it all here. I'm very okay with patting myself on the back. I don't require anybody's validation. I know what I've done. I know what I'm proud of. And I think it's almost unique to be able to keep it to yourself in a day and age where, like, social media and oversharing is such a normalized activity. To be able to quietly or exist behind the scenes and just have people wonder and guess and have rumors and gossip float around about what you do and where you do it and where you go, that works for me.
Great. Well, I'm listen, for most folks, you're incredibly hermetically sealed. I Googled you and I was like, oh, she designs bedrooms and children's rooms. And I was like, oh, wait a second. No, it's something totally different. But anyway, you've been incredibly open and transparent with us today. So I think we're the lucky ones. You get a chance to actually hear a little bit more about your process, Kayla. So, so our podcast is called Practice Forward, and it's really about thinking forward into, let's say, the next 5-10 years of your practice. What do you see? What do you see emerging over the next 5-10 years that's really going to transform your practice, and where are you excited to be going with all these new developments in technology and the way the world is going?
Oh, that's a great one. I think a lot of it is just the innovation in material sciences, and a lot of the places we'll be going, I'm hoping that it'll be spaces we haven't encountered, be it the ocean or, like I said, space, and starting to investigate those places, and then, furthering the technology and materials, and getting to either pull things out of the ocean or out, bring them back from space and get to experiment with those kinds of things. So that's kind of where I see us going in the next few years. And I'm excited to learn about it. So.
Wow. Yeah, and I have seen people living in these underwater bunkers now. That's kind of a new trend.
Yeah.
Those are really cool.
They are.
There's one that looked pretty similar to that James Bond villain layer.
Yes.
But of course, it's a lot more modest. But yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine some of the ways people are going to be living in a couple of years.
Right.
And I'm sure you'll have a lot to do with that.
I hope so. It would be an honor. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, none of us will ever see it, but hopefully,
right.
hopefully you can check in with us and give us another word picture in the future.
Right, I can draw it for you with the crown. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I hope to one day have something I can show people so that they, believe me. No, but yeah, I mean, a lot of times I hope that I'll be able to either like teach at some point, or, get to participate in seeking out some of those environments, be it, I'm not a big underwater person, but maybe taking a trip down there to learn about it. So
yeah. Okay,
We'll
well,
see.
really fascinating work, Kayla. You're not going to see this in Architectural Digest, but you're not going to find this work online. But it's a fascinating world. It's a world that most of us never really think about because it's so kind of under the surface. But quite a fascinating practice and really interesting evolution of yours. It's great to hear about. Thanks so much, Kayla.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So once again, it's the Practice Forward podcast. I'm Owen Bush signing off, sponsored by Scandaplan. Please join us next time, and look out for Kayla Cooper, especially if you need to house some uranium or, anything else. We'll keep it free. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take care.